Can you hear my voice clearly? Hello.
Yes, we can.
All right. Thank you. All right, our honorable speakers, beloved Periplusians, and all our distinguished guests, book lovers, educators, and all learners wherever you are. Good evening and good morning in Seattle. Very warm welcome to Periplus Talks. I'm Carmelo, and I'll be the host of today's event. All right, let me begin with Periplus Talks. It is managed by Periplus. We are one of the first and the biggest imported book distributor in Indonesia, which has served for about 35 years. Started in 1985. We are now distributing books to all the corner of Indonesia with periplus.com, and also another division, Periplus Education, which supports education books. Together with us as well, Pak Judo Suiji as our Managing Director. Thank you for coming, Pak. Well, ladies and gentlemen, books is knowledge. Knowledge is power, Francis Bacon said. Thus, we actually would like to be a partner in learning. That is why we make Periplus Talks. Selected from the best, we invite the author to give enlightenment, to get the same spirit to make a better life. Periplus Talk today is in collaboration with Markplus, which has been reputable marketing consulting in Indonesia. Thank you very much. I really appreciate this. Well, we have a similar name, Plus, Periplus and Markplus. So it's a sounds like a perfect combination, isn't it? Together with us, Pak Iwan Setiawan as CEO Markplus. So welcome, Pak Iwan. Thank you very much for the support. And our theme today is Walking Backwards. It is coming from the title of the famous book written by Colin Breyer and Bill Carr. They are the agent of change for Amazonian, and how lucky we are. This evening, Bill Carr is present among us, share one of the secret recipe from inside behind the greatness of Amazon. So thank you very much, Bill. Welcome to Periplus Talk, and we are very excited and very happy with you this evening. And before we go to main discussion, allow me to remind you some points. First, you might keep your video on, but please do turn off or mute your microphone. If you forget, apologize, we will turn it off remotely. And second, there will be a Q&A session, so prepare your good question. You might put it on the chat box below. This event will be delivered in English, but if you want to write the question in Bahasa, you are pleased to do so. And by the way, we'll give a surprise gift for the first 5 selected questions by moderator. All right, this talk show will be moderated by Pak Mahendra K, Datu, or we can call it Pak Mahendra. Pak Mahendra is a professional, yet also educator who currently appointed as the Director of Overseeing New Business Development and advisor to several public listed companies in business development and innovation. He is also regular columnist at major newspapers and works on few startups. Pak Mahendra obtained his master's degree in SEAS Trade and Industry and got the PhD from the National University of Singapore. So without any further ado, please give big round of applause to our moderator today. We can use the applause emoticon on the right corner below. Wait, here. All right. Yeah, Pak Mahendra Kadatu, Pak Mahendra, time and virtual room is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Pak Carmelo. Good evening, everyone. Good morning, Bill. Seattle, 5 a.m. We try to be in sharp. Yeah.
Good morning.
We start the discussions about 90 minutes. So I hope it's worth it for you, yeah, to be with us in Jakarta. We expect you soon to not only come to Bali again, but also Jakarta or other cities in Indonesia. My name is Mahendra Datu, or you call me Mahe, so to make it easy. And tonight in Indonesia, or this morning in Seattle, we are happy to have such a Periplus Talk event that's being routines almost every month, that we can share many different issues. Again, thank you for Bill, who joins us and to discuss with us about the book that is being published by Macmillan. It's a good book. Well, I cannot say a good book. It's a great book. I have read it myself, not yet finished. I can show you. And tonight, we will have Bill to read about not only Amazon itself, but how this book finally arrived in our hands. And not only the inside stories and secrets that we would like to know more about how the culture in Amazon is really being shaped in a certain way that finally it becomes one of the largest companies. In 2018, Amazon reached $2,000 trillion company. $2 trillion dollars company, or $2,000 billion company, which is only the second after Apple. Such a short time. Then we believe that the presence of Bill Carr today or tonight really help us to understand more about how the secrets being revealed in Amazons by the insiders like Bill Carr himself through the book. I recommend you to get the book after the discussion, because we will have more eagerness to know why Amazon becomes such a big company. We have tonight, not only with Bill, but also two other speakers with me. One is Iwan Setiawan and Aditya Budi. First, I will introduce you. Who are they? Bill Carr, you know, the author, co-author of the books with Colin Byers, formerly the VP of digital media at Amazon and responsible for the launching of Amazon digital music, digital videos, and Amazon Studios. And such of the system that Bill Carr developed looks like become a standard in Amazon to create new products and services, including Kindle, Amazon Web Services or AWS, and other things. Bill Carr now working on the helping companies to work backward, just like what the book tells us about. And he's also been involved in several companies like OfferUp and Maveron. So again, thank you, Bill, for coming with us in this evening event. Now we have Iwan Setiawan. Iwan Setiawan is the CEO of the Markplus, one of the reputable consulting companies in Indonesia. Iwan Setiawan graduated from University of Indonesia and also Kellogg Business School in Illinois, I believe in Chicago, for the MBA. He's now also the editors for the publications of marketeers, both print and online. And he's been working with several companies and also co-authored with Philip Kothler and Hermawan Kartajaya for several books that claim international awards. That's good that Pak Iwan also being with us tonight. Also, we have Aditya Budi. Who is Aditya Budi? This young fellow is really bright, yeah. He is now the CEO of Premiero, the app-based insurance companies. It's quite growing fast in Indonesia, and it's been quite what's so called active in the global mindset in IT area, covering insurance, media, sports, and education industries. He graduated from Bina Nusantara University in Indonesia and master in information systems in Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. So three of them will be with us tonight and sharing, commenting, and exchanges ideas in this about 90 minutes event. Without much ado, I will start with Bill about the book itself. Bill, can you tell us more about the books? Why you finally, with Colin Byers, end up to put all your thoughts into this book? Why? How that thing happened? Screen is yours, Bill.
Thank you, Mahe.
Yeah.
So, well, here's how it happened. I left Amazon at the end of 2014, and I spent. I then recommitted myself to working with early stage companies. So the Amazon that I joined in 1999 was an early stage company. It was only 4 years old at that time, and in fact, it was a high growth company with very few systems and processes in place. We really had, one business, which was selling books, and we were just starting to have businesses selling CDs and DVDs. So it was a young business. But the company that I left was very, very different. It was one of the largest companies in the world and highly diversified. And so what I wanted to do was to recommit myself to working with early stage companies to help them make that transition to becoming a very large and successful global player like Amazon. And so part of that work was to spend time as an entrepreneur in residence at a venture capital firm named Mavron that is based in both the Silicon Valley and Seattle. And I was participating in the annual offsite meeting for the CEOs of the portfolio companies of Mavron. So a variety of companies ranging from Series A to Series D and their CEOs. And we were having a breakout session along with Howard Schultz, who was one of the co-founders of Mavron. And if you don't know who Howard is, he was also, of course, the founder and CEO of Starbucks Coffee. And so in this breakout session, the topic of Amazon came up. And Howard said, Amazon, I don't understand. How does Amazon do it? How have they been able to be so successful in such a diverse set of businesses, from digital media to web services to e-commerce to devices? We're still working on, getting our core business of coffee right, and yet they've been able to be so successful in this wide variety of businesses. So I was sitting in this meeting, and this comment struck me, and I shared this comment with my friend and former colleague Colin Breyer a few days later. And as we discussed it, we realized a few things. The first thing we realized is that this question comes up all the time. It's not just executives like Howard asking this question, it's the press, business school professors, really anyone who aspires to be successful in business is looking at a company like Amazon and wondering, well, how have they become so successful? The second thing we realized, of course, was the two of us actually know the answer to this question, thanks to our specific roles in the company at a very specific time. We both happen to have a front row seat to this specific transformation process the company went through between 2004 and 2007, where not only were all of the businesses that have now resulted in Amazon's growth were developed in that time, those businesses including Amazon Prime, the Amazon device business that includes devices like Echo and services like Alexa, the Amazon Web Services business, fulfillment by Amazon, and the digital media business like Prime Video and Amazon Music. But in addition, a set of core processes and principles were also codified during this 1 3-year window, and that these principles and processes were used to build not only those new businesses, but to run the entire company. And we realized that if we could define these, distill these, and make them accessible to business professionals around the world, that they could benefit from studying these, learning about these, and actually, if they choose to, apply them to their own business. And so we decided to write this book, and we asked Jeff if he was okay with that, and he was very supportive. So we decided to write this book to pass it on to the next generation of business leaders around the world.
All right. So basically, you have confidence that because the books came just recently, but you also managed to work for the property companies or developers companies, yeah, for that when you mentioned about that. So basically, you are confident enough that working backwards model that you guys doing in Amazon actually compatible in any industries. Is that so?
Yes, well, because there's a proof of concept, which is at Amazon. So Amazon is successful in a wide range of businesses, as I said. So e-commerce, digital devices, Amazon Web Services, and Fulfillment by Amazon, which are B2B businesses. So these are really different businesses. They're not the same at all. Furthermore, these processes and principles were applied to these businesses when they started off with a team of one, and they still work with a team of hundreds of thousands of people, and billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue. So they are fractal. They are fungible across a variety of different kinds of businesses and industries, and they scale. They scale infinitely, as demonstrated by Amazon's success. And furthermore, Colin and I have been working with early stage companies now for more than a year in our consulting and advisory practice, working backwards at LLC. And we work with a portfolio of about 15 different companies, the CEOs of about 15 different companies today. And again, these companies are diverse. They're everything from financial technology to healthcare tech to transportation, you name it. We are helping those companies to implement and apply these processes inside those companies.
Oh, definitely it works for any kind of industries, yes. Now let me touch about the marketing side. I remember I was Amazon affiliate myself in the early 2000s, yeah, when I was still in Singapore, and it quite didn't work very well. Suddenly Amazon stopped it, the program, yeah, and now Amazon is like a marketing company. This thing that the revolutionary breakthrough, if I can mention, from the offline into online approach that Amazon's, you mentioned, going digital, selling books not only by mail but also by platform. How really Jeff Bezos and the team, including yourself and Colin Byers, really think about that quick shift, yeah, from going analog, quote unquote, into fully digital? This one later on, after you share with us, I would like Pak Iwan to also contribute things that, because it's a marketing things. So, Bill.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Okay, this is about transformations of how Amazon's really have a revolutionary breakthrough, moving from fully analog or quote unquote offline, this mail services. I was myself Amazon affiliate at the time, into a fully digital transformations. And how do you see that? What triggered that?
So how did we transform our business from just being a physical media business to a digital media business? Yeah. So if you go back in time and go back to 2004, Amazon had about $5 billion in annual revenue in 2004. And the vast majority of that revenue was, I think, roughly 80% of that revenue was all physical media. And by that, I mean, paper-based books, CDs, DVDs, okay? However, there were several problems with that. Number one, our physical media business, the growth, the largest business was in the United States. And the growth of that business had already started to decelerate. Our annual growth rate for that business had dropped down to about 15%, which is not a high growth business, 15% year over year. A high growth business is, 60, 70, 100, 150% year over year. So our business was not going to get much bigger at that kind of a growth rate. The second problem was that the writing was on the wall that physical media, the media business was about to be transformed, because by 2004, the iPod, there already had been more than 1 million iPods sold. People were using Napster to share songs digitally. And it was clear that the technology, bandwidth was becoming better. The technology was changing. It was clear that there was a transition that was going to take place, that media was going to become digital. That was pretty clear. Now, what wasn't clear at that time was exactly how this would take place, when, what were the right business models. None of that was clear at all. It seems very, very clear today that you should build something that looks like Netflix or Spotify or the Kindle or Audible to be successful in this business. But back then, this was not clear at all. So it was not a quick transformation, to be clear. We actually, a lot of companies, when they see these signs on the wall, what they would do is have an emergency sort of session with the executive team, where the executive leader would say, we need to go launch our own digital music service. Apple's getting successful there. We need to launch it now. And take one of their leaders and say, someone within your team needs to go do this, go get it done. And that is not what Jeff did at all. Instead, what Jeff did, so that's a what decision, what you should launch. Instead, Jeff focused on who. And the who decision is, who should I put in place to lead this effort? Because this is not a 3-month project. If I actually want to build a sustainable business, a multi-billion-dollar global business here, I need to think long-term. I need to think in the scale of years, not getting something out the door in the next 3 months that looks like what Apple has launched. And so instead, what Jeff did is he took one of his most talented leaders, who was my boss at the time, Steve Kessel. And Steve was managing not only the US media business that I was running, but also the media business across the world, as well as some other businesses. He was managing about 95% of Amazon's revenue. So he was really running the largest part of the P&L by far. And so in an unconventional move, Jeff said, Steve, I want you to stop managing that business altogether. And I want you to go off and start a whole new business, build a whole new team for digital media. And this is an unusual or unconventional approach. The conventional approach would have been to say, Steve, find some product manager in your team to build up a plan for what you're going to go do in digital media and manage and run that within the context of your existing portfolio of the media business. And the reason why this ended up being a very smart decision for Jeff to say, Steve, you should work on this full time, is because, sorry, someone, could you please go on mute? I hear some background noise there.
Tolong
thank you.
Unmute ya, tolong mute ya, sorry.
Thank you. So by putting Steve on this project full time, this allowed Steve to focus on it completely, to be single-threaded focused on the prospect of digital media and to think big about what you really need to do. And one of the, over many months of ideation, of sessions with Jeff, with me, because I came along with Steve to help go build this business, and thinking about what we should build, we came to the conclusion that what we needed to build was a reading device, because digital books was not going to happen until and unless there was actually a great device that people could actually read on. And the requirements for this device were quite unusual too. Nothing like this existed in the marketplace. And we were an e-commerce company. We didn't know anything about building, hardware devices. So Steve had to go out and recruit a senior leader to go run that division. And that was Greg Zara, an executive from Palm. So the point is that by focusing on putting the right leader in place, and actually we went very slowly at first. It actually took us more than, from the moment that Jeff told Steve, you're going to go run digital media, to the moment we launched Kindle, more than 2 years elapsed. It was actually a long time. It was not a quick transition at all. But by actually going slowly during this period of time and putting in place the right team, thinking very clearly about what would be the right product, rather than just getting something out the door quickly, this was actually one of the biggest insights to how to be successful in building a whole new business inside of a big company. Because roughly the same process was happening for Amazon Web Services. At the exact same time, Jeff had asked Andy Jassy to go explore this world of Amazon Web Services. And he and his team took well over a year as well to finalize their plans, and nearly 2 years before they launched the first web services. So you want to go slow to go fast, have a really deliberate plan for what you want to do, and you need to think big in terms of the leaders and the kinds of capabilities you need to build before you go, if you actually hope to create a large multi-billion-dollar global business.
Pak Iwan, thank you, Bill. Yeah, Pak Iwan, Yonton, Pak, any commentary on the particular issues? It's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Mahendra. Morning, Bill. Yeah, so as I read the book, I see a big difference between Amazon and other similar businesses that probably have the same visions when they started building the same businesses. I think a lot of people have the vision that probably e-commerce will shift into a platform business, into something like Amazon Music or Prime Video that I know Bill used to run. I think a lot of companies have the same vision. What differentiates Amazon mostly is, at least I understand through reading the book, is the excellent execution. And I think one of the key message of the book that I would like to convey as well, that I think is very, very symbolical to the excellent execution, is the working backwards, according to the main title of the book, creating a PR FAQ, which I think is quite brilliant in the way you create a press releases and also frequently asked questions before you even invented a new business or a new product. I think it helps you get a clarity of mindset, clarity of thoughts, clarity of vision, so that you know exactly in greater detail what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to build. And I think that's one of the big difference between these companies. I think a lot of companies make the same bet, but they don't have the same ability to execute within the organization.
Yeah, so we go back to the same story about our transition to digital media. So, once Steve and I had moved over to start to focus on this, we then had, meetings with Jeff, a few times a week to discuss, well, what are we going to go build? And we would come into Jeff with these presentations, using the tools and skills we had learned in business school. And so we would do things like complete a SWOT analysis. For those that don't know what that is, that stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We would outline these in a 2x2 matrix to define, to think about how to build the business. Or we'd go look at Gartner research that showed the projections for what would be the growth rate and the size of the digital music business over the next decade. And we would go build a pro forma P&L that said, here's what our profit will look like. Here's what the size of here's how much revenue, here's how much market share we're going to get over time. Here's how much profit we're going to get over time. So here are all the reasons why this is going to be a good business to be in. And Jeff would look over, we spent a lot of time putting together these presentations, and we'd put them in front of Jeff. He'd look at them and look up to us after about 30 minutes and just say, where are the mock-ups? And by that, what he meant was, show me a definition, show me the mock-ups, the designs for what the website experience will look like for this new business that you're planning to build, which is really another way of saying, tell me what the customer will experience. Because if you think about all those materials we were building, SWOT analysis, pro forma P&L, market share, there was not one thing involving the customer in any of that work, right? The strengths, it's about your strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. This is about the prospective market. It's about your competitors. It's about the financial goals. But none of this says anything about actually, well, what are you actually going to build that will create real value for customers? Why will customers care? How are you going to help them? It didn't do any of that. And so he asked us to come back and bring back some mock-ups. Well, for those of you that are in the tech B2B or B2C tech business, you know that making good mock-ups for your website or your application is actually quite hard. It actually requires a skilled designer. It requires you to spend a lot of time thinking, making decisions about how this product or service will work. And so we tried that, but that didn't yield very good results either, because in many cases we hadn't really thought through all the details of how this service would work. And so finally, Jeff made the recommendation to say, instead, why doesn't everybody go write up a document, write up a 2 to 6 page document that describes what you think we should build in digital media? What would the product be that you would build? And so by this time there were maybe 15 of us working on this. And so 15 different leaders, executives, we all wrote up our plans, our visions, and then we all read them and discussed them. And then we realized now we're really getting somewhere. Now with these documents, people could really describe in great detail. If someone described, a music device, someone described what an e-reader would look like, someone described what we would do in movies and TV shows. And these documents are really detailed. And we realized we were onto something. And then Jeff wisely took it one step further and said, from now on, let's make these documents press releases. And the reason to make it a press release is because normally when you're developing a new product or service, at the very end of the process, the last thing you do is write a press release. And when you're writing that press release, what you're really focused on intently is, what are customers going to care about? What will the press care about? Why will people really care about this product? What makes it unique and special that people should get up out of their chair and go buy it? And by doing so, then you're hyper-focused on the customer, and you can document an ideal product to meet their needs. And once you've done this, if you've actually, and it takes many iterations, many drafts to do this well, because what you have to really do in that press release is clearly define what is the problem you're trying to solve for the customer, and what is the product solution that solves that problem. That sounds really simple and really easy. It's actually very hard to do, to make that really simple and clear and actually address a real problem and fix it with a real product that people will be motivated enough to actually buy. That's not easy. But once you've done that, then what you need to do is work backwards from that point to figure out, okay, now that I've described this ideal but hypothetical product, what would I actually need to do to build it? What new technology would I have to develop? Or what new technologies would I have to combine together? Or what new business model would I have to create, or new partnerships? And that's what's all in the second part of the document, which is called the FAQ, the frequently asked questions, that asks and answers all of those hard questions. Like, what will be the biggest challenge in building this product or bringing it to market? How much will it cost? But it does, at that point, then it is appropriate to actually answer questions like, okay, how large is this market really? And what is going to be the pro forma P&L? What are the per unit economics of the business? But then you do that after you've defined something that will work for customers, not the other way around. And so that's why it's called working backwards. You start from what would be great for the customer, the ideal customer experience, and work backward from there to make it a reality. And the amazing thing is that once we develop that process, literally all the products and services that you use today at Amazon, whether it be web services, Echo, Alexa, they were all developed using this process. And the great thing is it's easy to learn. Anyone can use it. Any individual can write a pure FAQ, and you work collaboratively as a group to review these documents and through many meetings and iteration to strengthen the document, to strengthen the idea and the plan, to get it better and better and better before you actually then realize, okay, we finally got it. Now let's go work on it and build it.
Okay, Bill, two things. So can we say that the issuance of the press release before the product is finalized just to attract feedback from the customers or potential customers? Is that so?
It's not used to attract feedback from customers. It's not something that you the process does not involve sharing it in a focus group or in a survey with customers. That's not it. Actually, what it does involve is sharing it with different stakeholders and leaders inside your company.
I see. Yeah.
Through many meetings where people ask hard questions, make suggestions. It's somewhat analogous to, but not quite the same, that if you are an entrepreneur and you have a new idea and you start sharing that idea with investors, each investor you meet with is going to ask you probing questions, is going to make suggestions. And if you're wise, you actually take that feedback, that input, and incorporate that in your plan to actually strengthen your plan, strengthen the idea to make it better and better. Amazon does, of course, do a lot of customer search, but typically speaking, we use focus groups and surveys as a way to confirm our plans, not as a way to arrive at our plans.
I see. Then in regard to the press release itself, did it ever happen that after the press release is issued, then the product was not really released? Did that ever happen in Amazon like that?
Oh, of course. So again, this is very much analogous to think of Amazon as a venture capital firm, and think about all the people that work there as entrepreneurs. And just as in that world, a venture capital firm meets with many, many entrepreneurs, looks at many, many ideas, right? They may, in a given year, they may, between their various partners, they may look at 500 companies and 500 ideas, but they probably only make about 20 investments in a year. So there are many more ideas. Amazon has a wealth of ideas of things they could go build, but they only build a fraction of them. And that's good, because what you really want is just like that venture capital process. If you're an investor, you want to invest in the best ideas, the ones with the most potential, the ones that are have the ability to create the most value. And some ideas, by the way, are just before their time. You may have a great press release where the idea itself sounds great, sounds fantastic, but as you write the frequently asked questions, you may encounter that there are one or more obstacles that to create this product that you haven't actually solved that problem yet. Maybe it involves some technology problem. So let's use virtual reality as an example, right? Facebook famously made a big investment in Oculus several years ago. And this would have been back in, say, 2017, 2016. And so the world believed, okay, virtual reality, here we go. This is going to become the next big thing. Well, it hasn't. And well, why not? Because there are several technology limits. There are some customer experience issues about making that great. There are some technology issues about how do you make it not tethered to a big clunky PC, make it lightweight, that the technology isn't there yet. There are some issues with the content. There's not a game or a specific application that is the killer app that people are dying to use. It's somewhat analogous to think about the first PCs, right? Everyone thought, oh, everyone in their home should have a PC, but there really weren't any real great applications for people at a home to use an early PC. So, but PCs eventually became huge, and virtual reality will probably become big, but once these different constraints are solved. But it may not be a technology issue, maybe a business model issue. It could be a partnership issue. There could be all kinds of constraints why a PR FAQ, where the idea sounds great, but there are some reasons why this is not ready to go. Or another reason really is that this idea sounds good, but it's not really solving a big enough problem. So one of the things that people don't ask themselves enough is, how big is the actual, actualized total addressable market for this product idea that I'm building, right? Because there are a lot of ideas that sound great, but the addressable market size is actually not that big. And one of the things that Amazon focused on is making sure that they were building things where the real total addressable market was very, very large, right? So Amazon Web Services is a huge total addressable market. Prime Video we tackle that because 90+% of all households around the world watch movies and TV shows. So you want to focus on things where it's a really big TAM.
Yeah, I remember also just a few months ago, Amazon also acquired MGM Studios, yeah, for one reason of 7,000 collection, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's also thinking backward or working backward on the way to go there. Pak Iwan, do you have anything to ask or to mention?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things I felt really strongly about the book is the amount of writing that is happening in Amazon. Before a meeting, you're expected to create a narrative, 6 pagers. You should create a PR FAQ for every new businesses or new products. Even the feedback for hiring decisions is very detailed in terms of the writing, in terms of the thinking process. And what I like about that is that it's not documenting after the fact. So you're not actually documenting the past. It's about writing your thoughts, your vision of what is going to happen next. In the short run, the next meeting, or in the long run, new businesses, for example. And one of the things that I would like to clarify with Bill as well is that it seems that you don't necessarily understand that this is the best way right away. Right? This is a process in which you discovered for a long time, making trials and errors, figuring out the best ways to do hiring, the best way to conduct a meeting. So this is an entire process. And I think some of the ideas were also from outside perspective. I mean, some of the ideas came from Microsoft, for example, from ex-employees. They became an employee of Amazon. And I think there are so many methods that are not really proprietary to Amazon, but it fits with what you're building. It fits with the culture. It fits with the way I think Jeff wanted the organization to be run. Yeah, perhaps you can also tell stories about that, Bill.
Yeah. So the fact is that we made a transition as a company in I believe it was 2004, either that or 2005, where we decided that for internal meetings of the company, internal meetings for groups of, say, 40, 50 or fewer, not when we had our all company, all hands meetings, but for meetings where you're really, reviewing a product, reviewing a business, making a decision, discussing a new policy. We decided that PowerPoint was not a very good tool for that. And if you think about PowerPoint and what it was designed for, it was not designed at all for business decision making. It was designed so that when you're a speaker in front of a big audience, you have something to project on the screen that talks about what you're speaking about. And so that's the tool that we were using at the company prior to this, which almost every company around the world did or was using. And but Jeff was Colin, my co-author at that time, was Jeff's chief of staff, which meant that he sat in every meeting with Jeff. And one of the most important meetings that Jeff conducted each week was the Amazon S team meeting. So the S team is the composition of the roughly 15 to 20 most senior executives of the company, most of them reporting directly to Jeff, who would convene once a week for a 4-hour meeting. And in these meetings, they'd be, meeting with, covering all kinds of topics, but maybe meeting with one particular team to review an important goal or important objective, or review a new policy, or look at a key decision about where to spend their capital. And but Jeff and Colin were reflecting after a day of one of these meetings, and they were very frustrated. They were frustrated that it felt like they weren't really making much progress in these meetings, that they weren't really getting to the heart of the issue when they met with these teams, that they weren't really making decisions effectively, that they had to meet with the teams multiple times to really get to the right solution. And so rather than just being frustrated about it, and this is one of the key insights, that Jeff decided to do something about that and to make a change, make a process change. Now, the change he decided to do in this case was, hey, why don't we try, instead of the teams giving a PowerPoint to us, let's have them write a document and we'll read the document. Now, before I describe that further, here's a notable thing about that. If that, he made this decision and they tried this new idea, and if it hadn't worked, no big deal. They could have tried that for a few weeks, a few months, whatever, and then just gone back to PowerPoint. So if it didn't work, it was a reversible decision, which at Amazon, we call that a two-way door. If you go through the door of that decision, you don't like how it works, you can go back through the door, and it's not a huge cost to the company to reverse the decision. But Jeff was not afraid to experiment. Second of all, he was not afraid to be influenced by outside ideas. So the idea came to them by being influenced by reading. So Jeff was a voracious reader of business books and studying how other companies were successful in other management practices, whether it's Toyota's management practices or being influenced by Jim Collins' excellent book, Good to Great. In this case, he was influenced by Yale professor Edward Tufte, who's famous for his books on displaying quantitative information. And what Edward Tufte had written about was that PowerPoint really is a poor tool for businesses to make decisions. And it's a poor tool for several reasons. First of all, it doesn't, it's bullet points, right? It's not complete sentences. It doesn't link concepts together. And most difficult business decisions have multiple variables to them. And to really understand a business problem, you have to take these different variables and you have to actually link them together. And for the audience or the reader, you have to draw the line to them and explain how these different variables actually relate to one another that then inform a point of view. And PowerPoint's not a good tool for that at all. PowerPoint also, typically the way PowerPoint works is that someone is making a presentation, they're making a pitch. They're selling you on something, right? And in many companies, this is the culture where I am selling this idea to management and I want to win and have them agree with my idea. Now, there's a couple problems with that. If you're the person who's selling the idea, it means you're likely to want to hide the reasons why you shouldn't do this thing because you're just looking to get a yes or approval. It also means you're not really looking to encourage a discussion or exploration about the pros and cons of this idea. You just want to get someone to say yes and approve it. And whereas in a document that's sort of more where you have more of a scientific mindset, you're actually laying out facts and contrary facts as well. You're actually doing something that we described at Amazon called truth seeking. And truth seeking is an extremely important element of how Amazon has been successsul. Because if you're truth seeking, you're really looking to understand an idea and understand like what are the flaws with this idea or this plan, as well as what are the pros. And if you read great business writers over time, Peter Drucker being one of the preeminent business author of the 20th century, he writes about this too, where the role of an executive management team is to understand an issue from both sides, and to have good arguments for and against things, to really understand an issue completely. So a good document does this, and a good document actually forces a team and the leaders of that team, when they're writing that update to Jeff and the S team, to really think through their business, think through their problems in a deeper way than they would if they write a PowerPoint. So the very process of them just writing that document allows them to understand their business, understand the problem much better. And then the last thing I'll say is that your ability to transmit information to the audience, what you're really trying to do in a business meeting is make a good decision. To make a good decision, you need to transmit a lot of information in a short period of time. And then you need to have enough time for the team to have a great discussion about that information. And PowerPoint is a crappy tool for that, okay? Most of the meeting ends up being 3/4 to 100% of the meeting is comprised with this pitch. of fragments of information that are not well connected. And then maybe 10 to 15 minutes can be left for a discussion. Amazon inverted that process. So instead, you spend the first 15 to 20 minutes of the meeting reading a 6-page document. And the amount of information that you can intake during 20 minutes by reading a good document is way more than you can take in during a 45-minute presentation. It's actually just math. Like, you can read faster than you can listen to someone speak. The pixel density, word density on a Word document versus a PowerPoint document is about 7 to 8 times higher. If you put all these factors together, an Amazon meeting where the executives are reading for 15 to 20 minutes, they are taking in somewhere between 7 to 10 times more information than the executives at other companies that are sitting and listening to someone sell them something in a PowerPoint. And furthermore, now they have 40 minutes for a high quality conversation where everyone is actually very knowledgeable about this topic now and can actually have a good debate and discussion to really understand and seek truth about the issues and gain alignment and understanding. So that's a lot on that topic, but I'm very passionate about this topic because I really believe, going back to the top of this discussion, when Howard Schultz was asking, how does Amazon do it? How can they understand such a diverse set of businesses? This simple tool of writing documents is one of the biggest answers to that question, which is that Jeff and Andy Jassy and the senior executive leadership team, they are just 7 to 10 times better informed about every one of their businesses than all of their peer executives.
All right. Thank you very much, Bill and Pak Iwan. We have with us now is Aditya Budi, the CEO of Premiero. We also would like to hear what he's going to say is about Amazon and the books itself. Pak Aditya, screen is yours.
Good morning, Bill.
Good morning.
Morning, everyone. So yeah, after reading your books, which is 2014 and 2021 is actually 7 years apart. And to be honest, it's still relevant to us and relevant to me by navigating Premiero. So the motto of go slow to be fast, by putting the customer obsession is the first strategy, is basically is one of the something great difference compared to the other normal startup company in Indonesia strategies. So many startup companies in Indonesia, they tends to burning feces money for getting a numerous leads, right? But sometimes they forgot to hear it back from their customers. So that's the thing that we at Premiero try to avoid. So even though our core business in financial sectors that very, very highly regulated, so we always put our customers as our topmost priorities, right? And eventually it goods because it helps us to shape our operationally, and the best part, we take the P&L seriously, right? So by understanding the concept of the working backwards that you have mentioned earlier, right? Although I still love to making PowerPoint decks, Bill, but I think it gives us a very new way to have a great discussions with not only for our colleagues, but also with our shareholders to have a more and more productive collaboration in discussions. We in Indonesia are trying to use complex languages to describe a simple product, and then we would like to emphasize this in the very simple words, that the cultural issues that in most Indonesian people are try to be passive in the meeting rooms. So I believe Mahendra and Pak Iwan also familiar with this, right? So the encouragement to have a good discussions it seems like hallucinations, and it's being replaced by bullets and points and diagrams in PowerPoints. So nevertheless, that the key concept that we fully understand from you guys, from to you, Bill, today is to make sure that we always address the customer's problems and how we should motivate in each every our operations to make our focus on the customer obsession itself.
Yeah, that's great to hear, and it's having customer obsession is not easy. It sounds, a lot of companies talk about it, and it's easy to talk about it, but it's actually very hard to do. And so why is it so hard to do? So if you think about it, when you have a meeting inside your company, or a meeting with investors, or whatever it may be, or maybe you have a meeting with, you have an important supplier for your business. So for example, in the e-commerce business, your suppliers are the manufacturers that, where you sell things, whether those be TV sets or books or whatever. You have a lot of meetings with those people. And every one of those meetings, guess whose needs are represented? The manufacturer's needs are represented. Your internal logistics team is represented. The finance team is represented, the legal team, right? But guess who's not in that meeting? The customer, right? So whose job is it to look out for the customer and their needs? And it's actually, if you actually put yourself in that mindset, you realize that a lot of these other forces or stakeholders, their interests are very different, or often in opposition with the customer's interests. And so it requires actually a considerable amount of focus and fortitude, in many cases, actually leading to difficult conversations with these different stakeholders, whether they be internal or external, to actually advocate on behalf of the customer. And in many cases, making decisions that seem counterintuitive or not in the best interest of your company to do the right things for customers, maybe like not in the right best interest for your financial needs in the short term, whether that be expediting shipments to make sure they get to customers before an important deadline, or lowering prices to match an important competitor. And so what Amazon figured out is that to reinforce this, to have this behavior reinforced, you need to have processes, because it's not enough to tell people to be customer centric. There's a saying inside Amazon, which is that good intentions don't work, processes do. And good intentions mean, for example, if you tell everyone, let's be customer centric, then everyone has in their mind the idea like, okay, I'm going to be customer centric and I'm going to try hard to do that. Well, telling people to try harder, you weren't customer centric that time, try harder next time. That doesn't really work, because we can assume they're already trying hard the first time, right? So
Yes,
asking you to try harder isn't really going to do anything. But if you instead put in place a process that forces that behavior, that forces people to actually have the customer first in their mind, then you're getting somewhere. And the working backwards process is a great example of that, where it forces you to put the customer first in the process and think about their needs and work backwards from there. So whenever you're, this is again, one of the key insights from Amazon, is that if there's a problem you're trying to solve, you need to put in place a process to solve it, not just ask people to try harder or do better.
All right.
Eventually, Padanu, one more, right? So,
Okay.
Bill, so how do you see, right, and how to encourage younger generations, right, that has been so familiar creating decks, and their language capabilities, or maybe their expressions to writings, right, is far away from the habits, right? They tend to create more decks rather than maybe try to put maybe some 3 or 5 sentence, like good sentence that maybe can describe the whole process. How to have a good encouragement of like that, because we are Indonesian are having those gap actually because of due to our cultures and languages.
Yeah, so a few really good question. I have a few thoughts on that. First of all, Amazon is a global company, and so we had teams all over the world. I managed teams in China, Japan, Germany, the UK, France, many countries around the world. And so, of course, in most of those countries, people's first language is not English. Yet they were required to write documents in English for presentation to senior management at the company. So this is not easy, but once people worked at this, I read many documents from people whose English was not their first language, or in some cases, people who were highly technical, software development engineers, machine learning engineers, scientists. And these people, with the right focus and dedication, they wrote some of the best documents that Colin and I ever read. Okay, so it can be done. The second thing, so how can you do it? People need to have a growth mindset, right? Just because you're not in university anymore, you're out in the business world, and you've been doing something a certain way for a certain period of time, just step back and reflect on that to say, are you saying you're never going to learn a new skill or a new capability? You should constantly be looking to learn a new skill and a new capability. And writing is, by the way, something that I'm sure you did in high school and university. So you can do it, but it's a skill that you'll have to come back to and work on. And then finally, what I would say is that these things, like writing documents or the processes that we describe in the book, they're much like someone that decides that they want to complete a marathon or a triathlon or some new difficult challenge. Maybe they've never done one before. The reality is that anyone can do one of these things, right? You can, if you've never run a marathon in your life, like if you want to, you can do it. But what does it require? It requires you to be dedicated. It requires you to learn new skills, and it requires discipline, that you will have to get up every day and go work out, train, and run. And these processes are no different. As Jeff often would say to people who would ask him questions in a meeting, basically asking a question like yours, but saying, this is really hard. As Jeff would often say, I never said this was going to be easy, right? And I also tell people that if you want to change the world, if you want to make a real difference, like, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. You're going to have to actually push yourself, learn new skills, develop new capabilities. And you should embrace this. This is good. This is growth. This is how you grow as an individual, as a professional. And so embrace new challenges, embrace change. Don't say, that's not how I do it.
All right. Thanks, Pak Aditya. Thanks, Bill. Bill, we have already several questions. Yeah, and everyone, please note that we have 5 gifts, for you for the best 5 questions. Let me start these questions. I think it's for Bill's. First question is, that's from Maria. Since Amazon become marketplace, how does Amazon manage their huge merchant? Oh, very short question. Yeah. Since Amazon become marketplace, how does Amazon manage their huge numbers of merchants? Okay.
Yeah. So first proviso, with any questions I'm going to answer, I worked at Amazon for 15 years, but I left Amazon in January 1st, 2015. So that is now almost 6 years, or 6 years have elapsed since that time. So the answers I will give are from the time that I was there. I cannot give you accurate answers for what Amazon does today. I have more information than most of you about that, but I do not have the accurate answer. So how did we manage but when I was there, we still had a very large quantity of merchants. So how do we manage that? So you have to think about any of those things with a system or a process. So first and foremost, if you sign up to become a merchant at Amazon, you'll see that there are a number of guidelines, rules in many cases, performance SLAs, right? The merchants must be able to accomplish certain things. They must be able to, when they get an order, they must be able to ship out the order in a certain period of time. They must be able to support a customer return. There are a number of requirements that a merchant must meet if they're going to join the program. Okay. Now, obviously, Amazon doesn't have the ability. Amazon created a self-service portal like any merchant, and you can go sign up to become a merchant tomorrow at Amazon. But Amazon, isn't going to check all those things before you start selling. So you start selling, and then Amazon has to have a way to monitor and measure whether each merchant is meeting those performance guidelines or not. Okay, so they've put in place systems and processes to measure those different SLAs. In addition, they've put in place a rating system, right? So it's a marketplace. So what's one of the best ways for you to manage any marketplace? It's to have customers be able to rate the different merchants in a marketplace. This is not a novel idea. This is true on marketplaces like eBay, which was a bigger marketplace than Amazon was. Marketplaces all around the world. I believe Carousel is a marketplace in Southeast Asia that you may know of. They have this capability too. Like if you're a seller on that marketplace, you get rated, and so the customers can see, and customers can give feedback on all these different elements of the merchant. And so this information is used for new customers to make decisions about whether they want to buy something from this merchant. But again, the company can use that information to decide which items they show from which merchants too. So there are a number of different tools that they have at their disposal to effectively manage this marketplace.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Second question from Aditya Raharja. How Amazon deal with stakeholder expectation on immediate return and learning cost, as there will be failed product and services? Shall I repeat?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So the first thing is that if you want to invent new things, the first thing you need to do is to realize and accept the fact that there is no such thing as invention without failure. That doesn't exist. If in fact everything you invent works, then you are either unbelievably lucky, or it's not really invention. You haven't really actually created something new. You've just been copying things that other people have built. Okay, but when you're actually creating new things, if you look at the most inventive true inventors or true inventive leaders, they have many, many failures. So if you look at Steve Jobs, who's obviously one of the most successful product innovators and inventors, I don't need to list for you the number of failed products that he had. Many of you may be too young to remember, but Lisa, or I can't remember the name of the product that Apple had that was trying to be like a personal sort of an early leader to a smartphone or tablet. They've had many, many failed products over time. Amazon too. Fire Phone is a huge failure, and many other failures that you all don't even know about or forgotten about long ago. And I failed many times in my role as a leader at Amazon, launched many products that did not work. Okay, so the first thing is you have to accept that those two things go together. So if you don't like to fail, then don't get into the invention business, because you're going to fail a lot. Okay, but there are different types of failure. There's failure from did you have the right idea, or there's failure from an execution point of view. And execution failure is not the kind of failure that you want to tolerate. Execution failure is a manageable thing, right? You don't. Execution failure just means that you and the leadership didn't manage a process correctly, and that shouldn't really be tolerated. And anyone that has execution failure and doesn't learn from that failure very quickly, whether they're an individual contributor or a manager, that's a different story. That's a performance problem. But when you come up with an idea, everyone agreed it was a good idea, and you tried it and it didn't work, that's just innovation failure. And that's okay, that's going to happen. But you also want to learn from that. You want to look at, okay, well, why didn't it not work? What assumptions did I make up front that proved not to be true. Okay, so to get better as an inventor, to get better as a leader, you have to learn from your failure. In fact, I would argue that one of the reasons why I was well prepared when I got into Amazon was because the company I'd worked at beforehand was a failure. We had a product that never found product market fit. And I learned what does it mean to launch a product where everyone thinks it's a great idea inside your company, but it really does not meet customer needs in a meaningful way. And if you've never had that experience, it's very hard for you to actually design great products for customers, because there are really important learnings you get from failing to meet customer needs with a new product.
All right, thanks, Bill. Question number 3 from Hugo Indratno. I'll try to summarize this. I work as educational technology integrationist, as something new still for Indonesia. When you told us the story how you start things with the end ideas, seems similar with the backward design in education. I have to prepare all the scaffoldings for my students. My question, how do you manage in your team to align ideas?
So alignment is a very important concept, and there really are 2 important tools that Amazon uses. This is going to sound very basic, but now that I've worked with a lot of early stage companies, they don't actually use either one of these tools effectively. The first tool is Amazon writes documents. Okay, so if you want everyone to agree on a plan, whether it's here's the new product we're going to go build, or here's the specific operating plan, here's the work we're going to do for next year to be successful, to meet our financial goals, whatever that is, if you write a comprehensive document that really in great detail describes the plan, describes the product, describes what you're going to do, and then if you meet with your leadership team, with the different stakeholders, and everyone reviews these documents, asks hard questions, gives probing suggestions, that then the owners, so the authors, then go and take that information, update their document, make changes, and come back, and you review it again. This iterative process of meeting, review, discussion, and alignment, it's an iterative process. You have to, in many cases, you may have to have several meetings and several reviews of a document before everyone is like, okay, great. Now we all agree, this is the right plan. This is, it's documented here clearly, so we all understand and agree what you're doing. Now we have alignment. Where a lot of companies, early stage companies, fail to meet this that I work with is that they describe their plans in a few sentences. They describe it in a few bullet points. They describe it in an OKR that's 2 sentences long. That's not alignment. That's just describing at a high level a particular objective or a particular initiative. But there's a whole lot of detail about what you're going to do that goes behind that. And if you want to be aligned before you do the work, then people need to actually understand, like, what is that detail? Exactly how are you going to do each one of these things? And that people have a chance to actually read it and agree to it and get aligned. So what Jeff would do, and this is again one of the areas where Jeff and Amazon achieved complete mastery. And the simple example again being the PRFAQ document. Before we would go write any code, do any work to go build a new product, we would go through this process, and we could, you might go through 20 drafts of that document. You might go through, 10 meetings with Jeff before you had actually gained alignment. And we're very clear, everyone agreed, this is what we're going to go do. And it's not just, Jeff telling you what to do, it's the team saying, here's what we're going to do. It's stakeholders giving input. It's a collaborative process to arrive at the right solution. But once you have that, and it's documented in great detail in a PRFAQ document that could be, 6 or more pages long, then they say, great, now we're completely clear on what we're going to go do. Here you go, team. Here's your budget. Here's your team. Go do it. And then but then you also have, check-ins. You then check in, say, every quarter or every month to say, how's the progress going against this? Because things will change along the way. So you have to have mechanisms for how you gain alignment, and then how do you maintain alignment with periodic meetings to check in.
All right. Thanks, Bill. Question number 4 from Bias Wiloso Jati. Question for Bill. What do you see about the future era for the next gen about e-commerce or any digital media? As well, how about the artificial intelligence roles for digital media?
Well, that's a very broad question. And, if I knew what the future was for any one of these businesses, then, I would be a very wealthy man. It's pretty hard to predict the future. It's easier to invent it, as a famous leader once said. But I will say that artificial intelligence, AI, machine learning, data science, this is one of the technologies that is going to be, really transformational to not just business, but, life as we know it here in the 21st century. The power of machine learning is incredible, and you can apply machine learning to, so many different problems, business problems, customer problems, that to make real strides and improve it. There are many new technologies that are exciting. That's one of them. Sorry, I'm not really in the prediction business. I can't tell you sort of what's going to happen in this world in the future. Like I said, if you want to know, the best way to do that is to invent the future, to create the products, create the services that will be the future.
Yeah, thanks. Next question. That's also for Bill. How big are amounts of complaints from Amazon's customers, and how did Amazon manage those and to change those complaints into continuous sale? Is it managed by AI or else?
Yeah, so that's an important question, because customers, I think to quote Jeff, as he said once, customers are wonderful in the sense that they are never satisfied, right? So
Right.
If you figure out a way to let customers order things online and deliver to them in 7 days, that's great. But now they'll want to say, well, how can I get it in 3 days? If you get it to them in 3 days, they'll say, that's great. How can I have it in 1 day? If you get it to them in 1 day, they'll say, that's great, but how can I have it in 1 hour? And if you have it in 1 hour, they're going to say, how can I have it in 15 minutes? So they're never completely satisfied. And so, and customers, and one of the great things with an online business, as opposed to an offline business, is that you get an incredible amount of feedback from your customers, right? Through them contacting customer support, through them sending you emails, through sending chat, and you record all this information. And if you have a good mechanism and process for organizing that information, like as a simple example, if you are running the business for Echo and Alexa at Amazon, well, there's a whole lot of feedback that customers are giving you, whether it's through your customer service organization, whether it's online in chat, whether it's in social media. You need to create mechanisms to collect, gather, and then organize and sort to say, okay, what are the biggest complaints and biggest problems that our customers are having? What are the top 10? How do I know which one is the biggest? How do I say, 30% of all complaints are for this problem, 15% are for this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to tap into that information. You need to organize it. And the great thing is then the customers are telling you what your job is. If you just look at that list, that tells you everything you need about what you need to work on, what problems do you need to solve. And that part is actually all not that complicated. Then the hard part is figuring out how to solve those problems. And that's where invention comes in. So a simple example that doesn't seem complicated today, which was that we knew from the early days, what do customers not like, or what would cause them to shop more often at Amazon? They don't like paying for shipping, right? That was very clear to us early on. Figuring out how to solve that was not so easy, because if you can't just give it the shipping for free, that costs you a lot of money. So how do we pay for that? How do we create a program that solves that? And we tried many, many, many things before we got to a good solution, which was Amazon Prime. But yes, tapping into all forms of customer feedback is critical to your job as a leader, and focusing on that and organizing that, and then coming up with a plan for how to solve each one of those problems.
All right. Before the next few more questions, I take a privilege to ask question myself. Hello, is it okay, Bill?
Yes.
Regarding to the 6 principles of the Amazonians, you mentioned already some of them, but I'm curious about what is the standard of recruitments for the new staff in Amazon? Because you mentioned on one of the Amazonian principles. What is the standard?
The standard for recruitment when
Yes.
people are interviewing and at Amazon, how does Amazon decide what's the standard for who they should hire?
Yes.
Yes.
Because it's mentioned you're hiring to progressively raise the bar. You mentioned about that, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
one of the most notable things about Amazon's hiring process versus most companies is that a lot of companies do not have a standardized process for how everyone is hired, and they may not have a set of objective criteria that are applied for every hire. Meaning, in other words, in a lot of companies, if a manager is responsible for hiring people, it's kind of up to them to decide what's important and what are they looking for in someone, and what's the process by which they hire someone. Now, that can be an exaggeration, but in many cases, these things, maybe some of that's defined for the manager, but not all of it. In Amazon, again, if you want, good intentions don't work, processes do. So if you want to hire people who will be great leaders at your company that exemplify your culture, your way of thinking, your way of managing, the first thing you have to do is define what those things are. What defines a great leader at your company? And Amazon did that, and that's called the leadership principles. So Amazon has 16 of them today. We had 10 of them when we first rolled them out. And those principles define. So if you ask any leader at Amazon, tell me what makes a great leader at Amazon, who would be the ideal leader? They would say, read these 16 leadership principles, and someone that embodies each one of these things, that person is an ideal leader at our company. So that's step one. Step two is then with Amazon's interview process, those leadership principles are the objective criteria by which every candidate is assessed. So when Amazon interviews people, they are interviewing them to understand how they will perform against each one of those leadership principles. And they do this by using a technique that creates more objectivity in the interviewing process, which is behavioral interviewing. And behavioral interviewing, you're doing a behavioral interview if every question you ask starts with, tell me about a time when you did, or give me an example of a time when you did blank. Meaning you're not asking hypothetical questions. You're asking someone to give you an example of a time when they did some specific type of work. Okay. And then you gather those examples, and the 6 or 7 people who interview each candidate get together in a debrief meeting after they've done the interview, and they look at the questions and answers together, and then they have a discussion and debate to say, did this candidate meet, exceed, or fall below the bar for each one of these 16 leadership principles, yes or no? And now no one, by the way, exceeds the bar for all 16. No one did it for 10 when we had 10. There's no perfect human being out there. But that discussion about whether the examples of this person's work meet the bar or not, this is the answer to your question, which is how does the company decide what work meets the bar and doesn't? It's these conversations where the company creates norms of examples to understand, like, is that an example of that leadership principle, or is that not an example of meeting that leadership principle? And so through using this process over and over and over again, experienced leaders and managers over time, establish norms and establish the bar for each one of these things. And so, again, the answer here is by having a scalable, repeatable process, which we describe in the book, called the bar raiser hiring process. That is how Amazon accomplishes this goal.
All right. Thanks a lot, Bill. Wow. What an evening here and what a morning in Seattle, I believe so. We actually have several more questions, but we try to be disciplined on time. So before your closing remarks, Bill and also Pak Iwan, again, I will pick 5 winners of the best questions. Of course, later I will announce. But also let me conclude that please, guys, try to get a copy of this. What Bill says actually is already written here. Of course, with some insight that we received tonight in Jakarta. And also just because this book is telling everything about how we manage a company well. As Bill mentions that the working backward is not only for Amazon type of industries, but practically all kind of industries. So I believe I already read the book, and I'll keep reading again just to internalize what I learned tonight, not only from the book, but also from the author himself. For the closing remarks, I have Bill and then Pak Iwan. After Bill's, screen is yours, Bill, and then Pak Iwan right after.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining. I hope you found this useful. I just popped into the chat a link to our website. From there, you can get more information about the book. There's some resources. For example, we have, Mahi just asked the question about interviewing at Amazon. Actually, there's an article that we wrote about 10 tips to ace the Amazon interview. Some other resources there you'll may find useful. So feel free to visit our website. Thank you so much for having me this evening and taking a chance to learn about Amazon's management practices and our book, Working Backwards. I hope you found it useful.
Thank you. Pak Iwan?
Yeah, I think 2 things I learned from listening to Bill this evening and as well as reading the book is that to have an excellent execution, you got to have a very structured process. It helps with the alignment, helps with the with driving the organization towards the common goal. Secondly, documentation. Write in very detail what you want to achieve, how you're going to get there, how you're going to execute. All those details are the key source of inspiration for all of your execution. I think that's all.
Thank you, Pak Iwan. As for myself, I learned about one important things about the 6 pagers. It's really new for me because I use PowerPoint a lot, and also the FAQ. And the idea of the press release also is quite new for me because in Indonesia, most press release is issued when the prototypes is already in the final step or finalized, even the product is already available. So this is quite a new lesson for me, and I'm sure it will also be a lesson for most of us here in this Zoom room. Yeah. And let me now thank you, Bill. Yes, you can get go back to sleeping. Sorry, yeah, it's 6 o'clock already, 6:30 in Seattle. Yeah, thank you, Bill, for being with us in this discussion. Thanks, Pak Iwan, for giving and sharing us some thoughts from the Markplus point of view, and then Pak Aditya Budi, as you testify how the working backwards really giving insight for this kind of industry in the financial sector, which is highly regulated. And thank you very much, guys. Me, Mahendra, Datu, thank you for everyone here in the room, in the Zoom room. And I just returned the screen room to Pak Carmelo, yeah? Pak Carmelo, who's going to be announcing the winner of the
all right, I will announce.
the gift. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, guys. Good evening. Good
Thank you.
morning for Bills. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill, Pak Iwan, Pak Adit, and Pak Mahe. Really interesting. I'm sure we are all really enjoy the moment. We learn from Amazonian, the culture, the philosophy, the insight of the customer experience, and the key success. Focus on who, not afraid in experimenting, not afraid in innovating, supporting with good documents, good data to make a good decision. That few things that actually keep echoing in my head right now, what Bill has said. And one more, 16 leadership principle. That's interesting for me as well. I'll find out more about it. Bill, as our appreciation, will send a book. It's about Jokowi, our president, and it will be sent from our office in Rutland, Vermont. Awesome. What an inspiring 90 minutes more talks. And thank you for the lots of questions that enrich the discussion. As I mentioned in the beginning, we'll give Periplus e-voucher as a gift for the first 5 selected questions. I noted here 5 names. First is Ibu Maria Murtiarti, second is Pak Aditya Raharja, and then third, Mas Hugo Indratno. Fourth is Pak Bias Filosojati, and then the fifth is Pak Intoni. All right, congratulations, and please write down your name and email in the chat box, or I think our team will contact personally, and then we'll send the e-voucher code. And the another good news is there is a 15% discount for Working Backwards books in periplus.com for today. And also I would like to announce that we will have Utopia Book Festival with discount up to 90%, so don't miss it. And let me extending very warm applause to our distinguished speakers, Bill, Pak Iwan, Pak Adit, and our moderator as well, of course, Pak Mahe. Let us give applause emoticon on the corner below. Thank you. Finally, we come to an end. I'm sure we are now, I noted here, 119 participants together with they who joined streaming on YouTube. I really enjoy these evening talks, very deep, very rich, a moment of reflection to absorb a lot of inspiring insights, stories, and secrets to raise the bar, upscaling ourselves, working backwards. So before we end, can we take a picture together? Hopefully we can